and welcome to Sit and See Live. I'm Dr. Jared Jones. My PhD research focused on philosophy of science, cognitive scientific research into meditation, and Tibetan and Indian systems of Buddhist meditative practice. I have a profound passion for teaching modern people how to do meditation in a full way, in a robust way that reflects the richness of the systems from which meditation was mm, originally removed and made into something, I think, much less than it used to be. So, Sit and See Live is a open question and answer session, as well as an opportunity for you to come and sit and do some practice at home, whether that is by tuning in live with me here. I have my phone sitting right here with comments coming in. Or you can tune in later and just follow along with the meditations as you please. So, I'm working on a new video at the moment because one of the courses that is being offered through my Facebook group is a course on Lamrim, which is the stages of the path to enlightenment. And part of the preamble, I suppose you could say, the very, very long, extensive preamble of the Lamrim tradition, is a description of why that tradition is worth studying and why these teachings for training your mind in general are worth studying, and the biographies of those authors and what makes them exemplary authors. And then that leads into, how to say, that leads into a discussion of how do you rely on a teacher? And then how do you actually do sessions of meditation where you're adjusting your attitude, you're adjusting your intention, you're adjusting your motivation. And these teachings are just incredibly rare and precious. I don't know how else to put it. They're incredibly rare and precious. They're unlike anything else on the planet in terms of their rigorousness and the way that they're logically laid out. It's much more like, I mean, of course, it has religious elements, but it's much more like a psychology textbook than some kind of religious teaching. So the section that I'm working on right now and getting ready to release a video on, I hope the community enjoys it, is what to do between meditation sessions. And this is an incredibly important point that is generally not covered in secular mindfulness or the modern mindfulness movement. In my humble experience, it's not covered very much really in the broad teachings that are given to non-monastics in a Western setting where you're trying to learn about meditation and train in meditation. So there's this critical question of what do you do between meditation sessions to ensure that the progress you're making in the session isn't destroyed by what you did in between, so that by the time you get back to the cushion, you're starting from where you were the previous day. This is an absolutely critical issue. It's a bit like, oh, I don't know, if you were trying to recover from an injured ankle, but you continued to go out and do the exact same thing over and over and over again that injured your ankle. Hey, Alfred John, welcome to the stream. Good to see you again. So unless you're doing, not only taking the medicine, but unless you're doing those things that actually causes your ankle to heal, and then giving your ankle the time that it needs during the day, during all of your other activities to heal, your ankle is not going to get any better. Or it'll get better, but it'll take a really long time. So this is a critical issue, absolutely critical issue. What do you do between meditative sessions to ensure that you continue making progress in meditation? And I think it's probably talked about because that requires quite a bit of buy-in that just sitting down and doing 5 or 10 minutes of meditation a day doesn't require. you know? And most people aren't willing and perhaps even able uh, to give you that kind of buy-in, certainly in the beginning. They want to see what the benefits of meditation are and then do all the other things that will actually make their meditation work, which is totally bizarre. I can't think of hardly anything else that's serious and worth doing that you would do that way, but that's how we are, you know? So I think that modern teachers have had this, you know, they're doing this algebra where they're thinking, well, if I give people the sweet bit, then maybe they'll stay long enough to do the bitter part. If I give them dessert first, maybe they'll stay long enough to eat their vegetables, you know? And there's definitely something to that. And I do understand that. And to a degree, I agree with it. You know, some of the content I'm going to be making coming up is basically geared for what people want to consume on YouTube, so that I think these very important teachings may, in fact, actually reach out and touch people and make a difference. Otherwise, it'll make no difference. Okay, I'm going to get off my soapbox now and actually talk about a couple of these things that you can do in between sessions to improve the quality of your meditation from day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year. So, trigger warning, I'm going to talk about ethics. It wouldn't surprise me if the stream immediately drops down to almost nobody. But I'm not actually talking about religious ethics at this stage of the game. Let me give you an example. Let's say, for example, you are relatively serious about meditation. You know, you have some interest in it. You want to make some progress in it, but the rest of your life is basically a mess. You know, maybe you have trouble being honest, and a lot of people get angry at you because you're telling lies. Maybe you've cheated on a business partner or a romantic partner, and you're dealing with the huge fallout from having done something like this. Some of the people that I've been quite passionate about helping over the years have had criminal histories. So maybe you've committed a crime. Maybe you've killed somebody, and you've got to deal with the consequences of having committed a pretty serious crime. Hello, hello, welcome, Belle. Good to see you. So if you don't have some grounding in ethics, if you don't have some grounding in ethical practice, you're going to be very, very disappointed, in my humble opinion, with your practice in meditation. So just to provide you a cogent example of this, imagine, for example, you cheated on your romantic partner, okay? You know, I think, I never confirmed it for sure, but I think this has happened to me. Imagine that you cheated on your romantic partner. Now, because you did this, and you know they're going to be upset, probably you're going to lie about it. So now you have to figure out, how do I cover all of this up? What happens if they find out? Blah, 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 blah. Every time you have a conversation with them where it's like even slightly off, all of those anxieties and emotions kick in, and you're going, oh man, you know, are they sort of subtly coming at this thing that I did? Are they going to find out? And your mind becomes increasingly distraught and filled with negative emotions. So let's say that the previous evening you cheated on your partner, you made up some lie, and now you're going to sit down the next day, and you really should try to sit down and do your practice the next day regardless, right? But you're going to sit down the next day, and you're going to find that your mind is an absolute disaster. Good luck getting your mind to focus on your breath if you are struggling with all of the conflicted emotions of having cheated on your partner and lied to them. Good luck. And even worse, if they found out somehow after you lied about it, it's a few days later now. I don't know, it's one of their friends heard this and saw this, and there was an Instagram post and blah, 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 and everything's on the internet now. And now they found out. And now your whole life, maybe you've been with this person a long time, is going down the tubes in a big way. Good luck doing your practice this morning. So why did the Buddha and why do the Taoists and why do the Asian systems for training and meditation in general also include ethical guidelines? Because if you're not training in ethics, you're not going to make headway in meditation. It's actually pretty straightforward. If your life is a disaster, good luck trying to control your mind when you sit down on a cushion, right? Welcome, cleric. Welcome. So ethics, very, very important. I'll talk about that a bit more when the new video drops. Also, as strange as it is, you need to be a bit kind to yourself and take some time to relax and sleep and try to get good sleep and try to take enough time to relax that you can actually unwind the ordinary stress and so forth of your life, so that when you sit down, your mind is better prepared to do the activity that you're trying to do, right? So this is some of the practical advice you find in very, very old texts on meditation, going back as far as, I don't know, maybe the 2nd century, you know? And that those ideas have been echoed over and over and over again in the commentarial literature, all the way up to the modern commentarial literature, training and meditation. Same thing, if you've eaten a very large meal and you're in a food coma, that's not a great time for meditating. I mean, you can still do your practice to the best of your ability, but it would be better if you had not have done that, right? So, ethics, getting reasonable sleep, and using your leisure time well, not overeating before your sessions. These are sort of basic things you can do to improve the quality of your sessions. And then there's another really major point, which is maintaining your topic of meditation between sessions. So someone in the comments says that everything I just said there is sort of like their life, you know. I'm not going to call you out, you know, but all of us have had times like that. Well, all of us have done. There's a public speaker who said something really cogent. I was listening to him recently. He said, you know, we all have at least one unforgivable sin. We've all done, probably each of us, one thing that we think is absolutely horrific. And you just have to, at some point, go, okay, yeah, I did that thing. I'm sorry about it. I'm not going to do that again. Here's how I hurt these people and those people. I'm going to move on, right? But that's not the subject of this stream. Not the subject of this stream. So there's this other major point of how and in what way do you maintain your meditation topic or training style between sessions? And this is a huge can of worms, but this is one of those points that I have put a huge amount of effort into, because as modern people, sort of everyday people living in the world, the normal world, you have work, you have responsibilities, you have relationships, some of them friendly or intimate or hostile. And you have to be able to take these situations that are quite normal, we might say, and transform them into the path, transform them into training. How do you do that? It's not easy. It's not easy. But there are 3 main things you can do, in my humble opinion. If your main practice, for example, was, you know, the most popular videos on YouTube for quote unquote meditation are, they have music in the background and usually scenes of nature, and someone's telling you to be grateful for your life, you know. Good luck, once again, without any kind of mental control or mental training, bringing that new attitude actually into your activities, you know. You need some real training in being aware of yourself and aware of your mind to be able to bring whatever it is you've done on the cushion into your real life. Yeah. So how do we actually do this? If your main practice is following the breath, hard to take that into the rest of your life, isn't it? Because unless you can stop everything you're doing and put all of your attention on your breath, it's going to be very difficult to bridge or create a connection between here's what I do on my cushion, and here's everything else. So this is why I pretty rapidly, in the way that I train people, take them from a practice of breath meditation where you very intensively develop the ability to control where your mind is and transition them over to body scanning. Because body scanning and placing your mind inside the body and basically, I don't like the word grounding, but bringing yourself back into your body and just simply being aware of what's happening in your body for a period of time is what one of my teachers sometimes refers to as micro sessions of meditation. At any time during the day, you can, I'm sitting at work in an office, for example, do one quick scan of body scanning, rest with the mind open, and it doesn't look unusual. You can be looking around the room. I mean, you could even be typing while you're doing it. I wouldn't recommend doing this while operating heavy machinery or driving, however. Don't do that. Just focus on what you're doing, okay? So with body scanning, again, the way that I train people is you do it seated, and then you learn how to do it standing, and then you learn how to do it walking, so that you can take initially a body scanning technique and then being aware of various points of the body and then opening the entire tactile field into your normal life. And then you can do micro sessions of your meditative training, your meditative object, all throughout the day. And now you're creating a bridge from this session in the morning, for example, all the way to the session in the evening, where you're maintaining some of the benefits that you got from the morning session all through the day and enhancing it once again at night. Then you wake up in the morning, and if your sleep was relatively good and you didn't eat too much and blah, 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 everything we just talked about, and you didn't, I don't know, do something really horrible to disturb your mind, now those benefits from the previous night are going to bridge into your morning practice. Then you do all these micro sessions and it bridges to the evening practice. So you're creating these bridges between each of your sessions where you're making your meditative capability more and more profound. And then to make that even more profound, you do something like Foundation 4 in the way that I teach these materials, which is opening each of the other sensory gates fully so that any activity you're engaged in, you can fully open the visual field and rest in the nature of visual consciousness. And when you get good at that, it doesn't look like you're doing anything, so no one's going to think you're weird. Which I don't know. During this most recent retreat, I talked about that a bit. You know, one of the things that stops us from making progress in meditation as modern people is that it's embarrassing, you know? Like you're doing this like weird foreign thing, and I mean, it's a little more normal now, but still, most of the things you experience in meditation, they sound strange unless somebody is a pretty seasoned meditator. Right. So through using practices like this that can be generalized into ordinary life and ordinary experience, you can take what you've done on the cushion, bring it into real life, and then bring it back to the cushion. And when you do that, then your life and your work on the cushion work as a virtuous cycle. What you do on the cushion improves your ability to live your life well. And living your life well improves what you can do on the cushion. And then you're closing the loop, you see? So this is my general advice. What to do in between sessions. As best you can, maintain reasonably good ethics. If you can also do some good stuff like charity work or donating your time or energy to things, etc., that's also beneficial, but at least try not to harm others, you know? Be honest, try to express yourself in ways that are pleasing to others rather than insulting and demeaning and damaging to others. Try to bring people together in harmony rather than splitting them apart wherever possible. Sometimes that's not possible or advisable, but take the general point. Try to use your time well. So I'm not always good at this myself, but still the general advice here is do your best not to waste time on things that don't mean anything. Yes, of course, you need to take time to just relax when you need to relax and recharge and refresh, but as best you can, try not to use too much of your precious human life to just sort of screw around with shit that's not going to help you or anyone else, you know? So, general ethics: don't kill, don't steal, don't cheat on your romantic partners or with other people's romantic partners. Be honest. Try to speak in a way that's pleasing and meaningful rather than the opposite. Try to speak in a way that brings about harmony instead of disharmony, and try to speak words that have meaning rather than using words that are sort of frivolous and meaningless. And then in terms of your mind, in terms of the general activity of your mind, the two big things are, on the one hand, you're going to want the stuff that other people have. And if your mind is deeply involved with, like, desperately wanting to have the belongings and reputation and good looks and blah, blah, blah of other people, that's going to disturb the quality of your mind when you try to do meditation later in the day. Likewise, if your mind is deeply concerned and sort of bound up with what's called ill will, the desire to harm somebody, usually because they harmed you first, right? You're getting revenge. Those sorts of thoughts and feelings, when you get to the next session of meditation, will cause you to have problems in your meditation, right? Because your mind is disturbed and those thoughts are powerful. So if you can counteract them as best you can and try not to chase them, then by the time you get to the next session, the quality of your mind will be better. So these all have to do with ethics. Yeah. Then try to bridge between two meditation sessions. And then as best you can, the general advice in Buddhism is in terms of consumption, which includes sort of all of your creature comforts: food, drink, not alcohol drink. Generally that's frowned upon, but just sort of beverages, sleep, and rest and relaxation, recuperation, that sort of thing, and sex if you're a layperson. That moderation is the way to go. Get what you need and enjoy yourself. It doesn't mean you need to be strange about pleasure, but be aware when you're doing much more than you need, and basically being addictive with your own behaviors. Yeah, because the more addictive you're being with your behaviors, and the more you're surpassing doing what you actually need in any given area, the more your mind is going to be affected in a negative way. For whatever reason, that's just how we're wired up. If you eat too much, you get really tired. If you sleep too much, your mind is really foggy all day and doesn't work right. If you don't eat enough, your mind is all screwed up also. And if you don't sleep enough, your mind gets screwed up there too. If you work 18 hours a day for 10 days, your mind is like Swiss cheese, you know? But if you sit around and do nothing and don't work and only feed your pleasure, your mind turns to Swiss cheese too. So you have to strike a balance between these two so that your mind stays in a sufficiently good state, a beneficial state between sessions. This is a critical sort of struggle that you have with yourself if you want to be a real practitioner of these kinds of arts. But also, on a much lighter note, there are so many practical benefits to living that way. Consider, for example, that you like it when you meet other people who are warm and loving. Like when you meet a stranger sometimes, and you can just tell they're sort of, not to sound too cheesy, but just radiating with love and kindness. You go, wow. You think about them later and go, wow, I wonder what that person's doing. I hope they're well. I hope I see them again at some point. I want to tell other people about this person I met. Like, I'm thinking in particular, I had a it's not quite random, but I had a pottery teacher in elementary school. And she was like the warmest, most loving, caring, genuine person that I had met up to that age, which is not very many people, admittedly, but And she had so many wrinkles on her face, and she had these deep, deep wrinkles around her mouth here and her eyes from smiling so much, and genuine warm smiles. And I asked her about those lines at one time because that's what kids do, and she said it was because you know, she was happy and smiling. I can't remember exactly what, but she just said because she smiled so much, that's where they came from. And I was like, wow, I didn't know you could smile so much it would change the way your face looks. Okay. So if you train your mind and you do a fairly good job of this, then other people will find you to be, generally speaking, not universally, but generally speaking, will look more favorably on you because you'll be more genuine. You will actually care about how it turns out for them, and they'll detect that. They'll feel that. It'll be easier to make friends. It'll be easier to keep friends. So there's lots of sort of odds and ends benefits. If you maintain a moderate diet, then you won't have as many health problems. If you maintain relatively good sleep, then you won't have as many health problems. If you don't spend too much time laying around in leisure, you won't have as many health problems. You know? On the other end of the extreme, if you do like really extreme types of exercise all the time, your body breaks down prematurely. And then when you hit, you know, your 50s or 60s or whatever, you have like you got to have 2 knee replacements and blah 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 because everything's worn out. So, moderation. Okay. So we've got a few people here from what I can see. Let's see if I can move my phone without causing a minor disaster. Oh, yeah, that works. Okay, so what I would say is let's do a bit of practice since that's the main idea with this stream. And if you have questions, pop them into the chat as they pop into your head, and then naturally as we go along, I will get to them, okay? All right. So as per the usual, let's start with 5 minutes of intensive breath meditation. Some of you have been in these streams with me before. Matter of fact, I think everybody that's here has. So let's just jump straight into it. You know what you're doing. You're going to place the mind on the breath with a great deal of intensity. Count from 1 to 7, 7 to 0, 3 times, or just get as far as you can in that process. Okay? So set your posture if you haven't already. Do a couple of circles. Rock back and forth. And then just let yourself fall to wherever the posture is. If your shoulders or neck are a little tight, you can raise your shoulders and then just drop them. Turn the head left. And don't turn it back to the front. Just relax the muscles, let it fall back to the front, turn it to the right, and then just let it fall back to the front. And now your posture should be relatively comfortable. Okay, put your hands wherever you would like. We're going to begin 5 minutes intensive breath meditation starting now. Continuing with the questions in the chat and comments in the chat. Cleric writes, ethics is the bedrock of meditation from what I've been reading. Yeah, there's more than one reason for that. I described one reason earlier in the stream, but another reason is that if you think about the way that an ethical commitment works in your life, an ethical commitment forces you to use the same type of mental processes that are required to be successful in meditation. Yeah, my mind's a little rowdy today too. So what are those mental processes? Those mental processes are two mental factors from Buddhist psychology: mindfulness and introspection. So mindfulness, we've discussed before, is a radically misunderstood term. It's this actually a term sati or smrti, which refers to memory. So you're remembering what you intended to do, and you're remembering the instructions for how to do it. So from a Western psychological point of view, this mental factor that we call sati or smrti, mindfulness, actually refers to both long-term memory and active or working memory, as they're called in Western psychology. So you decide, for example, that you're never going to lie again. You make a big commitment, you do a big ceremony, and you make a promise to all sentient beings and all the Buddhas and say, I'm never going to lie again, right? So you make this commitment, and then the next day, someone's asking you a difficult question of consequence, and the desire to lie comes up because telling them a lie would be easier and it would save you trouble and whatever, right? But you just made this big ethical commitment to never lie again. And so you remember, oh yeah, yesterday I promised I was never going to lie again. Well, now I want to lie. What am I going to do with this? And then you start actively applying this vow to the desire that you have, and you go, no, I have this desire. I'm not going to forget that I made this commitment, and even if this desire to lie is here, I'm still going to maintain this commitment. So that's all mindfulness. The other mental factor is called introspection. Sometimes I call it vigilance. It can be translated a bunch of different ways, but it's your awareness of your own mind and the quality of your own mind. So while you're thinking about the fact that you took this vow and you're really trying to hold that in mind, even though the desire is there, etc., to tell the lie, your introspection, your mindfulness over here, is watching the whole situation, and it's aware that you have the desire. It's aware that your mind is fluctuating or struggling between the desire and the vow that you've taken to not do this. And so you're increasing your ability to have internal awareness of the processes of your own mind and to have control over those. So mindfulness and introspection come together to maintain your ethical commitment. I hope that makes sense. In exactly the same way, not even an analogous way or a similar way, but in exactly the same way, when you try to place your mind with intensity on the breath, for example, first you have to remember the instructions for how it is you're going to place the mind on the breath, which is long-term memory. And then you have to remember, oh, right now, the active task I've set for myself is to hold my attention on the tactile sensations of breathing, and then to count the breaths as I go through the breath. This is what I'm doing right now. I'm not going to forget what I'm doing. That's mindfulness, exactly like you did with your ethics. Introspection is just watching to see if you actually do that or not. And it notices that you're struggling to do it. It notices, as Cleric said, when your mind is having a rowdy day. Or when your mind's having a good day of meditation, or when your mind is drowsy, or whatever the quality of your mind is while you're trying to keep the mind on the breath. So ethics is the bedrock of meditative practice on the one hand because it reduces chaos in your life externally. Your life becomes less chaotic. Internally, before you sat down on the cushion, your emotions are more stable because you're not doing a bunch of screwed up stuff throughout the day that causes all sorts of negative emotions. And then on top of that, you're cultivating mindfulness and introspection, which are the two mental factors you need to trade in meditation. So this is why ethics act as the bedrock of meditative training. In terms of dreams, I've heard a couple of different explanations. There are a number of practices for dreams actually, but those don't come up usually until much later in the training. Those don't come up until someone is doing pretty rarefied and often secret types of practice in Taoism and Buddhism. But yeah, I mean, dreams are basically, roughly speaking, are more or less, if they're ordinary dreams, are just the images your mind produces based usually on past things that you've done or things you've consumed. And it just sort of scrambles it up into salad and makes it into an experience. Dreams can be more than that, but generally speaking, that's the extent of what's going on with dreams. You can get much deeper into that. You know, there are archetypal things that, because as human beings we all have very similar kinds of experiences in very broad categories. Therefore, our dreams also fall into very broad categories that can be sort of archetypal. So they've done big experiments on this, looking at populations of different people from around the world and what kinds of nightmares they have, for example. And I can't remember what it was. It was maybe a snake or something, that almost everybody, no matter where they're from, if they're having a bad dream about an animal, it's a snake for some reason. Which if you think about it, is actually quite strange, because most of us don't see that many snakes. Okay. So sound and sound bowls became a bit of an important thing. I don't know the history exactly, but they're a bit of an important thing because anything that produces sound, that is an artificial sort of bowl or bell, it requires two implements. Yeah. So you have the piece that's going to produce the sound itself, and then you have something else that is required in order to strike this thing to cause it to vibrate and create the sound. And so this naturally is a symbol of impermanence. I'm sorry, is a symbol of interdependence. These two things have to work together to produce this other thing, which proves to you that the sound you're hearing is an interdependent phenomenon. Even though it sounds like it's sort of self-existing or self-arising, you know for a fact that it comes from a set of causes and conditions. And since it comes from a set of causes and conditions, it has to be impermanent, selfless, empty of inherent existence, etc. And so, again, probably way too much detail for like a Thursday afternoon, but yeah, this is broadly speaking, symbolically, what sound making implements mean in Buddhist symbology. Symbology. I like Freud's theory about dreams personally. Yeah, Freud, and who's the other one? There's someone that came right after Freud and did a lot of work on dreams. The early psychologists did some really interesting stuff because they were thinking about things in relatively ideal terms without without actually doing experiments. It was just observations. And so a lot of what they came up with is wrong, of course, but there's quite a bit of it that is more interesting because of how it's like on the border between philosophy and observation and scientific stuff. So yeah, I actually recommend reading that stuff highly. You know, it's certainly as people of European descent, it's part of your cultural heritage and a pretty important one. Ah, yes, Jung, that's right. Okay. Let's now do, for the people that are new, we're going to do a body scanning meditation. If you have questions about meditation in general, drop them in the chat and I'll cover them after we get through with this meditation. Since I almost killed Cleric yesterday doing a 25-minute body scan into body opening, we're going to limit it maybe to about 10 minutes today. Okay. So we're going to do a body scan and then we'll go into full body awareness using the 5 points, the 6 directions, and then full body awareness. And this will be a pretty rapid induction. So strap in. So strap in and fully lock in, you know. You already know what it means through intensive breath meditation to bring your mind to the object with intensity. So bring your mind to being aware of the places that I name with great intensity, and then shift your awareness to the next place without visualizing, without imagining, without mentally commenting, without analyzing. You're simply just becoming aware of the places that I name. Okay, so here we go. Bring the mind into the right foot, right ankle, the right calf, knee, lower thigh, upper thigh, and into the right hip joint. Bring your mind into the left foot, the left ankle, left calf, left knee, left lower thigh, upper thigh, into the left hip. Bring your mind to the front of the pelvis. Bring your mind to the back of the pelvis, including the buttocks. Bring your mind to between the hip bones on the back of the pelvis, your sacrum. Follow that down to your tailbone. Take a moment, just squeeze as much of your awareness into your tailbone as you can. Now slide the awareness forward to the anus, perineum, and since we have people of various genders in the room, just scan your sexual organs again with the same quality of awareness, simply being aware of the different parts. And just take a moment to scan through your sexual organs inside and out. Bring the awareness to the lower abdomen, in other words, the front of the waist. Bring your awareness to the back of the abdomen, lower abdomen, in other words, the back of the waist. Bring your awareness to the middle portion of the abdomen in the front. Follow that band around to the back. Bring your awareness to the front of the chest, just below the collarbones to about the solar plexus area. Follow that around now to the back and just feel the top of the barrel of the chest, all those ribs and so forth. Bring your awareness to the front of the right shoulder. The side of the right shoulder. The back of the right shoulder, including the scapula. And the top of the right shoulder. Into the right bicep. Elbow. Forearm. Wrist. Palm. Back of hand. Right thumb. Index. Middle. Ring. Pinky. Left thumb. Pointer. Middle. Oh, sorry. Went a little too far. Left shoulder in the front. Left shoulder on the side. Left shoulder on the back, including the scapula. Slide your awareness up to the top of the left shoulder. Into the bicep. Elbow. Forearm. Wrist. The palm and the back of the hand. Left thumb. Pointer. Index. Middle. Ring. Pinky. Now bring your awareness up to the lower third of the neck, from the collarbones area all the way around to the sort of upper, just above the scapula on both sides. The middle third of the neck, upper third of the neck, and into the joint between the skull and the neck. The back of your scalp, left side, right side, your right ear, left ear, and slide around to the forehead. Left eyebrow, right eyebrow, left eye, right eye, and your nose, left cheek, right cheek, not your lips yet, but the upper lip, and then your chin. Now your top lip, lower lip, and the skin inside your mouth. Just, if scanning all of your teeth is too much, just become aware of your teeth with your awareness inside your teeth. roof of the mouth, below the tongue, into the tongue, follow the tongue to the throat, and now I'll move to the crown of the head, so the top of the scalp, finally. Find the most sensitive point where the most sensations have gathered at the top of the scalp. From that point, stretch your awareness down to both of your hands, into the fingertips and the nail beds. Hold those 3 points. And stretch your awareness, without losing those 3 points, stretch your awareness down to the heels, toes, toe tips, nail beds. So now your awareness is filling that point at the top of the head, your hands and your feet. Hold the 5 points. Now release your awareness of the 5 points, and we're going to do the directions. So everything of your tactile body, everything that you can actually feel in the body without imagining, without visualizing, without analyzing, simply being aware, like as if your mind is a mirror that's simply reflecting what's actually there. Become aware of everything facing to the front, everything facing behind you. Release that. Everything facing to the left. Release that. Everything facing to the right. Everything facing upwards. And everything facing downwards. Now we'll do 2 directions at a time. Everything facing front and back. Hold that. Release. Everything facing left and right. Hold that. Release. Everything facing up and down. Hold that. Release. Now combining the directions. Front, back, left, right, up, down. Hold all 6 directions. Very gently let go of the directions, but keep your awareness fully inside the tactile body. Transition over now to simply resting in the nature of tactile consciousness. Tactile consciousness generates the experience of tactile sensations, and then it experiences or is aware of those tactile sensations. That's just what it does. So simply abide as best you can, or exist or be with your mind fully absorbed as the consciousness of tactile sensation. Okay. Try not to transition out of that kind of meditation too quickly. Just take your time. Okay. Questions in the chat from today? I think tomorrow, for those who are interested, what we'll do is we'll go from body scanning to opening the visual sense gate to opening the auditory sense gate. And we'll work a little bit with having 2 gates or even 3 gates if we can open at the same time. Cleric survived. Yeah. Yeah, I had a feeling from yesterday, Cleric, that if you go a little bit too hardcore when you're if you go a little bit too hardcore and you're going it on too refined a gradient of body scanning before your system is ready to do that, it just leaves you feeling totally fried. So you have to turn the volume up and down based upon your current level of capability. So Cleric said that he actually, Cleric, we've never actually talked. You got to reach out to me on Facebook so we can properly chat. I don't actually know if you're a man or a woman. uh, okay, yeah, actually, some good questions and comments coming in. So, to back up to what I was saying just a moment ago. Oh, you have been reaching out. Okay, I'll see. It must be in the sort of you don't know this person category. So I'll find you. I'll find you. So when you're doing body scanning, if you're trying to do a longer session with more intensity, so if you're, like if you wanted to take a few days and really go hardcore, it's pretty easy to do a weekend retreat focused on body scanning, for example. So you would do a couple of days, basically more or less isolate yourself, unless there are people living at your house, then just let them know, look, I'm going to be doing a bunch of meditation this weekend. You know, we can talk, but, try to keep it a little light and we'll just get through the weekend, that kind of thing. By the way, if you're going to do retreats at home, make sure that whoever's with you, your spouse, your family, whoever, that you garner their support. Because if you want to do more retreats and longer retreats and more difficult retreats at home, maybe lasting 30 days or or 20 days or 10 days or whatever, you're going to need their support to do that kind of thing. So work with them to try to fit your retreats into whatever level of support they're going to be able to maintain. So yeah, you can do a few days. For example, you could do a weekend where you get off work on Friday, let's say, and then you spend the evening doing a few extra sessions of breath practice just to get the mind in the mode. You wake up the next day, do a few intensive practice sessions of intensive breath meditation, maybe 3 or 4 per session for the first 3 sessions of the day, and then the remaining 5, 6, 7 sessions, whatever you're able to manage, you would do body scanning. And then the next day, you would just do full-on body scanning. And by the end of the day, you'd probably be able to sit for an hour, maybe 90 minutes, and you could do 1 or 2 rounds of very detailed body scanning without very much difficulty. It doesn't take that long to be able to generate pretty strong concentration and build it up if you use this technique. Let's see. Yeah, don't, with this technique, you have to turn the volume up and down, like I said, based on where you are. If you're having a really good day, you can make it more detailed and the benefits will be more. If you're having a bad day, then make the detail that you're scanning the body with less, and you'll still get benefit from it. The mind will be better than when you started. So don't feel bad. Bell asks, some say eating less is virtuous. What role does food or diet play in the ability to focus? So I covered that a little bit earlier in the stream, but I will briefly recap. So the general advice in Buddhism is, if you were to starve yourself, for example, which was the practice of some renunciates at the time of the Buddha, and is still the practice of some renunciates today, including amongst the Jains and some Hindu schools, if you starve yourself for long periods of time, you won't be as capable in meditation while you're starving. That was the Buddha's conclusion after doing that kind of practice with minimal consumption of food for a very long period of time. He said, I just don't have the energy to do the types of practice I need to do to transform my mind. So this isn't working. So on the other hand, he grew up as a prince, Prince Siddhartha. His father, Shuddhadana, was the main person raising him, along with a number of attendants and everything. And he would have had access to, for at least the time, whatever kind of food and drink was available and in season and prepared by the best possible people and so forth. He would have been enjoying himself. And so he knew from that experience that when you overindulge, your mind is also it's not wieldy. Your mind is not in a good condition for doing your training. And so what the Buddha recommended is that unless you're sick and you need to have extra calories or food to maintain your system, that you basically just eat as much as you need to maintain the body and not die. So that you're not losing weight, you're not gaining weight, you're just consuming what the body actually needs. It's pretty simple. It's like a pretty simple formula, Then if you were a monk or a nun, it's a little bit more formalized, where the Buddha said, okay, for the sake of being able to have a really clear mind in the evening, don't eat after the sun reaches its zenith in midday. So you will have the opportunity to have something in the morning sometimes, and then you have your largest meal at midday, and then the rest of the day you would fast. And you can have liquids that have calories like fruit juice and things throughout that period of the day, or tea with sugar and this sort of thing. But the main thing is that you want to stop the digestive tract from having to do any work in the latter part of the day when you're going to be doing intensive meditation for the remaining period of the day. And so for lay people, that practice is not required and is not necessary really. But if you wanted to do retreat, I recommend that kind of thing. Have breakfast and lunch and skip dinner, because by the time you hit about 3 or 4 in the afternoon, if you're fasting half the day, your mental clarity is exceptional. Your mental clarity is excellent, and you can get into deeper concentration more easily. Also, it helps to know, just worth throwing out there, that when you're fasting, you have less sexual desire. And so if you're entering retreat and you don't want to be distracted by your intimate desires, fasting half the day can help reduce your intimate desires. So that can help in a number of ways. Okay. Well, I think for today, I think that'll be it. We'll call it a day. We did a couple of sessions. We answered some questions, and we will pick it up tomorrow. I'm actually thinking that 7:30 to 8 London time may be the best time for this, at least right now. And if it runs over a little bit, it runs over. But I'm thinking that might be the best time to do this at the moment. Okay, so tomorrow I'll do my best to be here from starting around 7:30 London time, if you're interested. Well, thank you all for tuning in. There's been quite a few people in and out, but for everyone who's been here throughout or who finds this afterwards, it's good to see you, and I hope to see you again soon. See you tomorrow.